Good morning, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to another slightly frazzled post-night shift's bookish breakfast. Don't know if you can see it on the camera, but the frizzy parts of my hair are like out to here from tonight. Just maybe in like an indicator of activity levels over the course of the night shift. Yeah, like whatever I do, they just like spring back up again. Been slightly electrocuted. All of this stuff behind me is from my wrap-up for Jane Austen July, which I filmed yesterday when I was slightly less static, and that's like 28 minutes long, so I'm not sure if I'm going to post it or if it's maybe a little bit longer than most people would be interested in seeing, but this today is just about two non-fiction books that I've been reading in the start of August. So starting with this one because I finished it. This is Taking Up Space by Chelsea Kwakye and Ogunbiyi, and I really carefully practiced saying those names so that I wouldn't say them badly, but the moment you say it with the camera in front of you, you mess it up, even though it's not hard to say. It must just be, I don't know, like, I don't know why that happens. So this is quite a recent book. I think it is from 2019. Yeah, 2019, and it is about, the subtitle is The Black Girl's Manifesto for Change, and Chelsea and Ora both studied at Cambridge University, and they fill the book with accounts from other black and trans, trans and female black people. Bear with me at this stage, but I think you know what I mean. So a friend of mine one of my colleagues lent this to me before July, and I was naughty because I kept it for the whole of July in order to enjoy Jane Austen July before I started it, because I wanted to give it my full attention and get the most out of it, I suppose. And I didn't want to read it maybe at the point of all the very strong political sentiment. I wanted to have time to maybe mull it over a little bit more. This has been even though it looks incredibly battered, I think my friend has lent it to many people already. It's a 2020 copy, and it's got an additional chapter at the end, just like wrapping things up a little bit. So yeah, I enjoyed this. I found it very interesting. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is at university, definitely not just girls, definitely not just people of colour. I think this would be relevant and interesting to anyone who is going to any university. I would say that it is very Cambridge focused, and even where it stretches outside of Cambridge, it's still quite focused on like Russell Group universities and prestigious universities, which I guess is the point that they're trying to make, is that taking up space in those more prestigious universities is more of a big deal and more of a political act, where there is a less good representation for black young women in those areas than there maybe is in other areas. I think they do a really good job as well. I mean, I don't have that perspective myself, but I think they do a good job of including trans people and including LGBTQ plus issues in the book, not in a deep and complex way, but it's definitely something that they haven't glossed over. So I think that is definitely a positive to mention of the book, because I'd imagine that literature about taking up space as an LGBTQ plus student of any form is probably relatively limited. I think this book is at its strongest when they are talking about specific facts that they've drawn out about the university application process, or like levels of certain events happening in universities. I felt like possibly they could have drawn on that a little bit more, because I think they do have that knowledge. Or it's also, another one of its big strengths is the different perspectives that it draws in from a range of different young people that they incorporate into the book. And they have let's see if I can find, they do little quoted sections from different people's perspectives, and then link it into the story, the narrative, the ideas that they are describing. But I don't know whether that was what I was looking for from my perspective, whereas I think a lot of what this book is written for young women who are in that position, and I think they wanted it to be maybe a bit more informal and a bit more accessible, and a bit more a few more funny anecdotes and things like that. I did enjoy the funny anecdotes, but I guess it was just not what I was maybe expecting from the book. I enjoyed it. I would rate it pretty highly, and I would recommend it to anybody who had an interest in like representation and diversity in universities in like any regard. And like I said, I would recommend it to current students or people who are about to be students. I would say there are some sections that might put you off becoming a student. They are quite honest on talking about things like sexual assault, which their form of honesty makes it sound like it is a very scary and dangerous thing to go to university, and I think that there is a huge problem with sexual assault and things of that nature on university campuses, but I don't think you're necessarily in a huge amount of risk just by going to university versus being a young person in other contexts, if that makes sense. One thing that I noticed when I was reading this is there are certain sections where they talk about, I guess, why they're talking specifically about black women and black trans people as opposed to black men. And I got this feeling as I was reading it that if I were to say the things that they say about black men, I would be being racist. And that, I don't know. Like, obviously they have a specific perspective and a specific context, and there are specific points that they are trying to make, but the way that they use the vocabulary and the way they construct those paragraphs it speaks in a very generalizing way, and like kind of groups people together in a way that is sometimes a little bit negative and a little bit critical. And I guess what they are trying to do is fight back against things that they have experienced and give other young black women the like validation for their feelings when they're thinking that, like, oh, why aren't I being supported by other people in the black community? But yeah, I did find that a little bit out of tone with the rest of the book, almost, where it has tried very hard to be quite like inclusive and positive towards other people. So yeah, so I enjoyed it and I would recommend it. But it had moments where it made me kind of pause for thought, I suppose. Then the other book that I am reading is another pretty recent non-fiction book, and it is Around the World in 80 Trains by Monisha Rajesh. So she is a travel journalist who went to travel the world with her fiance just before they got married, and just went by train. She's previously done this in India. I haven't read that book. I would like to, having read this book. So I love the description of the travel. Every train she gets on, like the specific like long distance trains, I'm like, oh, I'd love to go on that train eventually. I really want to go on that train one day. Like, I've now got a list of trains that I really would like to go on, and I've always kind of enjoyed and been interested in train travel, but it's never been something that I would maybe have felt like I had a list of ideas. I already mentioned when I was reading this before, which I got it I think in May, it doesn't have a map, which it should have a map. It just, there's no way to argue it. It's got photos. It's got whole sections of like colour photos, which are lovely, but I'd rather have a map, because that would help me build a picture of their journey so much more. What I'd say is I think that like travel biography and travel writing often has to be a collection of interesting and entertaining anecdotes that build towards a bigger narrative and a bigger picture that carries you through the book. And she is really, really good at the anecdotes and the small bits of context and describing the people that they meet. But so far, I don't feel like there is a wider narrative that is going anywhere. I guess part of it is talking about maybe her relationship with her partner, and I guess how happy that relationship is, which is a nice thing. I'm not saying that I would want there to be any conflict there, because they seem very happy with each other. But there doesn't seem to be something that kind of like carries it along, other than the trains. Like they're going on all of these trains and the trains are carrying them somewhere, but other than her saying that she loves trains, there's a lack of momentum, I guess. But that's not to say I'm not enjoying it. So yeah, so that was 2 books that I'm reading this week, and I hope you're all having a lovely week and enjoying the sunshine, if you're getting any sunshine like we are. And yeah, I'm gonna go get some sleep. Take care.